The episode opens up in Botswana, with the narrator mentioning that animals once ruled the earth, and what if they finally decided to take it back? Following this, Abraham Kenyatta, a safari guide at Kituko Safari Camp, can be seen preparing for an early morning safari ride for the tourists. He enters his camp and notices his nephew watching videos of a scientist, Robert Oz, revealing that his latest experiments have concluded something shocking. Soon, all animals from around the world will change and stop obeying humans. They will hunt down all humans until they are wiped off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, Abraham wakes up his partner, who also happens to be Robert's son, Jackson, and asks him to get ready for a safari ride. After a while, the two hop on their safari jeep and guide a group of tourists through the grasslands. Along the way, they notice a trophy hunter trying to shoot a rhino, but Jackson cleverly plays loud music and scares the animal away, hence foiling the hunter's plan. The scene then shifts to Los Angeles, where two men come out of a bar and try to relieve themselves around a corner. Suddenly, two lions appear out of nowhere and gobble them up. The following day, a news reporter at LA Telegraph, Jamie Campbell, watches the news of lions escaping from the city zoo and killing 3 people. Following some research, she learns that the lions started acting strangely after they were fed food supplies from Raiden Global, a biotechnology company. That evening, as Jamie is conducting an interview, she gets to know that several cats from the neighborhood have gone missing in recent days. The next morning, Jamie visits the zoo and meets veterinary pathologist Mitch Morgan. After a quick chat, Mitch takes her to his lab and dismisses her suspicion that the food from Raiden Global caused the lions to be violent. He also reveals that the lions have since been put down, as they had become too dangerous to tame. Before he leaves, Jamie informs him about the missing cats. In Botswana, Jackson and Abraham fly to Masismako camp and get shocked to find it completely deserted. Not even a single tourist or staff member is present. Just then, Jackson finds a video camera lying on the ground. When he plays it, he sees the tourists running away from something. Outside, they discover a single lion's footprint and become confused how a solitary animal could scare 100 people away. Sensing that something bad might have happened, the two set off to search for the tourists. After a while, they find a bus stopped in the middle of the tall grass field. Both the guides grab a rifle and get out of their vehicle, with Abraham asking Jackson to stay behind and look out for him. When Abraham enters the bus, suddenly, a woman walks out of the tall grass and approaches Jackson. She nervously mentions that they should run, and just then, a lion enters the bus and attacks Abraham. Jackson is devastated to hear his best friend's screams, but before he can help, a bunch of other lions show up. As a result, he reluctantly gets into his jeep and drives away with the woman, leaving his friend to die. On their way, the woman introduces herself as a French tourist, Chloe, and reveals about how she and her group got attacked by a group of lions when they were out to see gazelles. Unfortunately, their day goes from bad to worse when the jeep suddenly breaks down, with the camp still 6 miles away. Jackson suggests they walk to the camp, but Chloe is afraid, as she has seen the barbaric man eating lions. However, when Jackson assures her that lions do not attack when they are full, she reluctantly agrees. After a while, as the two are walking alongside a river, they are approached by yet another group of lions. The duo freezes in horror, and when one of the lions comes near them, Jackson notices that its eyes have defiant pupils. This apparently means that the lion is dangerous, and right then, Jackson and Chloe slip and fall from a small cliff. Fortunately, they are not injured, and they make it safely to camp. There, Jackson hypothesizes that his father, Robert Oz, was right all along. The animals have started acting crazy. Hence, he immediately calls the Botswana Center for a research and rescue team. Back in LA, Jamie receives a message from Mitch, mentioning that he has found the missing cats. She immediately drives off and finds him waiting for her at an elementary school. To her surprise, Mitch shows her a tree full of cats and assumes that they are being controlled by something strange. Jamie wastes no time and calls animal rescue, while Mitch finds a small honeysuckle plant under the tree. Surprisingly, when he picks up the plant, all the cats climb down the tree and walk away. In Botswana, the rescue team finally arrives at the camp, but instead of helping, they arrest Jackson for interfering with lawful hunting. Meanwhile, a few kilometers away, a lion drags a lifeless Abraham up a tree, while the other lions simply watch. The next day, Jackson somehow gets out of prison by pleading with the guard, Kavimba, that he has to go. He explains that something strange is happening outside, and that they have to solve it before the situation gets worse. Hearing this, Kavimba also decides to accompany him. When Jackson steps out of the prison, he meets Chloe, ready to leave for Paris. They exchange numbers before departing. Next, Jackson and Kivimba, along with a Jeep driver, visit the place where Abraham was attacked by the lions before. They notice a trail of blood, and after following it, find Abraham lying on a tree. Disregarding the danger, Jackson rushes to save his friend, while the other two follow him closely. Surprisingly, Abraham is still alive, and he tries to warn Jackson about the lions. The group somehow manages to place him in the Jeep, and at the same time, the pride of male lions also arrives. However, they do not attack the humans and simply watch them leave. It appears as if they wanted the humans to leave. In the next scene, the men have already arrived at the camp where Jackson's mother, Elizabeth Oz, is looking after the injured people. She reveals to Jackson that Abraham is absolutely fine, with no lacerations or bite marks on his body. After a while, he wakes up and Jackson pays him a visit. On inquiring, Abraham reveals that when he entered the tourist bus, a male lion sneaked in and knocked him out with a single swipe. The next thing he remembers is being dragged to the tree branch. Hearing this, Jackson deduces that the lions were never going to eat Abraham, but were instead waiting for others to find him. He then assumes that the lions want to spread a message to the human world that they are now no longer afraid. The scene then shifts to Slovenia, where a British couple is trying to adopt a Slovak kid. Since they are on a few days trial, the husband Nicholas tries his best to keep the boy happy. He takes the boy to zoos, buys him toys, and takes care of his every need. That night, a dog sneakily grabs the boy's toy and runs away, prompting Nicholas to go after it. A few minutes later, he reaches a dark alley and finally catches the dog. But when he takes a proper look around the place, Nicholas notices several mutilated bodies lying around. Terrified, he tries running away, but a bunch of angry dogs surround him and finish him off. Back in Los Angeles, Jamie does some research and learns that Raiden Global is actually using harmful chemicals while manufacturing their food products. She then visits Mitch and tells him that she suspects the chemical is the instigator of the animal's violent attack. It turns out that all the lions in the city have started being somewhat violent. After a while, they meet with a zoo worker and convince her to provide them with a lion cub so that they can study it and find the cause of their aberrant behavior. Soon, Jamie and Mitch start their research by sedating the cub and hooking it up to several wires. But before they can come up with anything conclusive, the lion cub wakes up. This shocks Mitch as the sedative was supposed to work for a further 2 hours. At the same time, he gets a call from the zoo worker from before, informing him that all the lions in the zoo have started roaring aggressively. When Mitch adds everything up, he concludes that somehow the lions have started to communicate long distance using unusual hyper-gamma frequencies. How did he figure that out? In Botswana, Jack's mom Elizabeth examines all the dead tourists and figures out that they have all been finished off in a different fashion compared to what lions normally do. Usually, lions go for the neck and inflict a quick death, but in this instance, the victims have severed carotid arteries, implying that they have died an agonizingly slow death. Elizabeth immediately summons her son and tells him that the animals have started to change, something which his father Robert had predicted long ago. It turns out that Robert was an avid animal researcher, and in particular, he focused on their behavior. He knew that the animals would soon turn. Sadly, none of his colleagues or family members believed him and instead just called him names. Elizabeth then tells Jackson to visit Japan and retrieve his father's research materials, as that's where he spent his final years. Though she hated him before, she believes that Robert's theory is coming true, and they need to know about it and control it before it causes more destruction. Jackson immediately agrees to go, and a banged-up Abraham also joins him. Following this, we are taken to Paris, where the French tourist from earlier, Chloe, is shown. She turns out to be an intelligence analyst at DGSE, which is the equivalent of the British MI6, or the American CIA. After work, as Chloe gets ready to depart, she is approached by a sketchy guy in a suit named Gaspard Alves. He appears to know everything about her, including how she survived a lion attack in Botswana. He explains about how animals around the world have become violent and erratic. To prove his assumptions, at first, he takes her to a morgue where the dog attack victims have been brought. Realizing that they don't have much time left, and because of Chloe's vast skill set, he wants her to aid him in his investigation. Meanwhile, Jackson and Abraham reach Tokyo and meet Minako, the second wife of Robert. Jackson informs her that they are here to retrieve the research materials from his father, but Minako replies that she doesn't have them. She reveals that everything is kept safe on a secluded island near Fukushima Nuclear Center. Wasting no time, the group leaves for Fukushima on a private plane. Minako hands the boys a Geiger counter, a device to measure radiation, saying the place is still not safe to visit. it. Just then, the plane is attacked by a swarm of bats. Jackson is shocked to see bats flying at such a high altitude, not to mention in the daytime. Unfortunately, the plane loses control and crashes into the sea, killing Minako and the pilot. Jackson and Abraham are devastated by the incident, but nonetheless, they decide to explore the island before help arrives. After some hours of walking, they finally come across Robert's research place. Strangely, they also find some horses that have their eyes gouged out. Later, after entering the main research house, Abraham discovers the horse's eyes kept inside a glass jar. They then play some of the research videos, where Robert mentions that the horses have become aggressive. He even talks about their defiant pupils. With this, Abraham and Jackson conclude that Robert blinded the horses when they became aggressive. On the other hand, the sketchy suit guy from earlier, Gaspard, approaches Mitch and requests that they work together to find out about the changing animal behavior. Mitch agrees straight away, but on one condition: Jamie will also join them. In the next scene, Gaspard and his team arrive at Fukushima Island and rescue Abraham and Jackson. They then reach a building in Tokyo, where Mitch and Jamie have already arrived. Following this, Gaspard introduces the four to Mr. Delaven, the head of the secret animal behavior investigation. Delaven shows them some clips from around the world where different animals are attacking and killing humans. He then asserts that the animal pandemic has begun and they need to act fast before it can cause more damage. At last, he summons the leader of the team, who is none other than Chloe. We are then taken to Mississippi, where a prisoner, Evan Lee Hartley, is about to be executed for killing a number of hunters around the area. But strangely, before the procedure can take place, a pack of aggressive wolves enter the prison and kill everyone on sight, except for Evan. For some reason, they appear to be submissive to him. The following day, Chloe suggests that the entire group remain classified and travel to Mississippi to gather information about the wolf attack. When they arrive, she assigns Abraham and Mitch to catch a wolf for research purposes and asks the others to accompany her to the prison. The group is skeptical about her decisions, but nonetheless, they agree. At the prison, Chloe meets Deputy Kraft and Agent Ben from the FBI. While Chloe and Kraft are conversing, Jackson takes a closer look at the CCTV footage of the attack and sees that the death row prisoner Evan Lee was mysteriously controlling a wolf. Evan been out there warging. Following this, the group walks out of the prison with Jackson, stating that the wolves need an alpha leader to control them. He then assumes that the alpha leader is Evan Lee. Later at night, Jamie researches Evan Lee and finds that he had no criminal background until 2008, when he stabbed a group of hunters to death for no conclusive reason. The next day, Abraham and Mitch go to a nearby forest, while Chloe, Jackson, and Jamie are at the prison area, looking around the wolves' footprints and their tracks. Jackson discovers that the wolves entered the prison by digging holes underneath the metal fence, and also helped Evan Lee escape. On the other hand, as Mitch and Abraham are wandering through the forest, Evan Lee and his pack of wolves surround them. But fortunately, before he can do something bad, Evan hears a wolf howling and runs towards it, leaving Mitch and Abraham unharmed. Meanwhile, Jamie interviews an acquaintance of Evan Lee and learns that he has always had a Bible on him, which supposedly has some writings on it. So, Jamie returns to the prison with a fake alias and goes straight to Evan's former cell. After searching for a bit, she eventually finds the Bible and takes it with her. On the other hand, Jackson and Chloe also unite with Mitch and Abraham. Together, they decide to leave with an injured wolf that was recently shot by the hunters. The scene then shifts to the hotel room, where the group is trying to treat the injured wolf and find out the reason for its aggressive behavior. After some research, Mitch states that the wolf is infected with a harmful bacteria, which he believes is responsible for their change in behavior. He then prepares a chemical solution and proceeds to test it with the wolf's blood. If the mixture starts reacting and showing bubbles, this will prove his theory that the bacteria is the culprit. Lo and behold, the blood reacts so violently that it causes the experiment vessel to explode. Later, Agent Ben from the FBI visits their room and informs Chloe that the deputy is on his way to interrogate her team. But before he can arrive, the group packs their belongings and leaves. In the last scene, a group meets Jamie at the parking lot, where she hands over the Bible she found earlier. Jamie also says that Evan Lee has underlined all the animal references in it. Just then, Chloe pulls out a photo of Evan Lee with another person from the Bible. Jackson is shocked by the picture, as the man next to Evan Lee is none other than his own father, Robert. To see what happens next, watch the second part in Series Recapped.